Hello viewers, today I'm going to be teaching us how to make apple cider vinegar at home. It is very simple to make and you will enjoy it. First and foremost, I'll tell you the utensils and ingredients to use. You need your apples, fresh apples. You need your chopping board. You need your bucket because that is where you're going to be soaking all the cut apples in. You need sugar and you need water and a cheesecloth. Now, when you get your apples, you wash your apples very well. And sometimes if I have a little apple cider vinegar remaining, I use it to wash the apples or a little salt in the water, and this is to remove any dirt or even things that are sticking on the body of the apple, because after all, these apples are brought from the market and they are usually uncovered. Then you cut the apples into two halves like I am doing in the video. And when you cut the apples into two halves, you slice the halves into slices. The slices shouldn't be too big and they shouldn't be too thin, because if they are too thin, they will dissolve in the solution at the end of the day. So if you cut them into sizable slices, and whoops, this one has a little bit of defect, I had to cut it off. So you cut it into slices as so, and usually when I cut it into slices, I make sure the core, the seeds, everything is put into that bucket. Now you can see me, that's the bucket. It's a small bucket, and that's the bucket I use in making my apple cider vinegar. So you cut it as I am doing, and then you put it in the bucket. I actually made this particular apple cider vinegar using 7 fruits of apple. So I had 7, about 7 in the market, and it's with 7 I am going to make my apple cider. Now I am done slicing my apples, and like I said, I put in everything, the core, the seeds, everything. Now I am going to add water. When you are adding this water, add it in such a way that all the apple, it covers the sliced apples. The water should be enough to cover the sliced apples. And when adding water, ensure that the water is very, very clean. Now you can see that the water I have added is covering the apples, but ensure that you leave a space so that by the time the apples swell up, it will not spill over. Now I'm going to add the sugar. Now there are two ways of doing this. You can either add honey or you add sugar. Previously, when I started making my apple cider vinegar, I was using honey. But honey has become very, very expensive and almost scarce. Yes. So, and I also discovered that the taste I get from using sugar is much, much better than when I use honey. And sugar is everywhere. You can get sugar everywhere. Now, most people would use the sugar based on the quantity of apples they have bought. 7 apple fruits, 7 tablespoons of sugar. But for those who have done sciences, you know that sugar is a catalyst to fermentation. So the more sugar you add, the faster it ferments. Though you have to still use the same timeline, but the fermentation is you get a better fermentation. So in this case, I've added more spoons of sugar than the 7 apples I have placed. So you can see me adding several spoons of sugar, tablespoons of sugar, and then you stir. You stir very well so that the sugar dissolves. You can see me adding up something. You would wonder what that is. That is called the mother. And this mother is from a previous apple cider that I made. Somebody once said they don't like the sight of the mother. But that is what even gives the apple cider the bacteria, the healthy bacteria that even helps it ferments faster, and it contains a lot of nutrients. So I am adding it to also speedy up fermentation. Now this is your cheesecloth. The reason why you cover it with your cheesecloth is to stop fruit flies from falling into the mixture or the solution just made, falling into the bucket and contaminating the solution. So you cover it with the cheesecloth, and the cheesecloth also enables the mixture to breathe. It has to breathe, oxygen has to come in to aid in the fermentation. Once you are done, you take it to a place that is cool and will not be disturbed, and you leave it for 21 days. That is 14. You leave it for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, it is either the apples sink into the solution or it starts smelling like fermented beer. If it doesn't sink, the apples don't sink, but it starts smelling or tasting like beer, it is done. If it sinks, fine. If it doesn't sink, no problem. Once it's 2 weeks and it starts tasting like fermented drink, beer, you can remove it and then sieve it out. And once you do, you wash your little container that you use to return the liquid back. As you can see in the video, I sieved the apple slices out because they are spent. We don't need it again. Toss this into your garden so that you can have a sort of manure for your plants, particularly for your vegetables. As you can see, now I am turning back the liquid. This is the first stage. After the fermentation, you return it back, you sieve it and return it back into that same container. I'm washing off the cheesecloth because a lot of the water in the course of fermentation, it swelled up and touched the cheesecloth. Squeeze it very well. Shake out the water. You can either use this or you use a dry one. But I made sure that I had shaken out the water and it's just damp. You tie it back and return it to your safe, dark place, and you leave it for 4 to 6 weeks. After 4 to 6 weeks, we shall come back and do the last batch. Now, this is the 6th week. In fact, after making this, I unveiled it on the 30th of September. It's quite a process and you cannot cut corners. Now that is the mother I'm removing because it formed some other mothers too. So now I am going to put it in a glass jar that has a lid. Why it is important to use a glass jar is that glass does not, it keeps the content still whole as it has been made. If you use a PET bottle or plastic bottle, with time you will discover that the apple cider vinegar is diluted because plastic containers allow diffusion of material into them. Things can go into them and dilute the content in the plastic bottle. But glass bottles, we allow the content remain fresh for as long as is possible. So now I am putting them into my glass bottles and storing up for usage. That little bottle there, one has to be careful because the apple cider over time had even chopped off the cover. Apple cider is actually very, very acidic. Now, the 4 to 6 weeks we talked about, it will turn from fermented and become acidic. You have to watch out for that because it is very, very important in the process of apple cider. From fermentation, it now becomes acidic. In fact, I have to return the other because I noticed that quantity I'm turning it back into the bigger bottle so that I can leave that container with a bad lid, bad cover. So now you can see me with my finished apple cider vinegar, and I believe it looks like one bought from the store. Thank you for watching.